Imagine a road trip with your friends, sleeping under the starlit sky and taking in the beauty of the world. That's the kind of freedom we crave in our 20s, exactly like Liz, Ben, and Kristy, who were living their dream lives when they started their road trip for the Australian outback, specifically to Wolf Creek. But their adventure turned into a nightmare when they crossed paths with Mick Taylor, a deadly serial killer. So, our dear marvelous family, we will explore the dangerous sadist hunter serial killer Mick Taylor, who seems to be invincible. Are you ready for this journey? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Mick Taylor? Mick Taylor is a sadistic serial killer who enjoys killing tourists from Australia by first gaining their trust. He pretends to be a clever and lovely man, but is highly manipulative and dangerous, and is obsessed with sexually torturing, raping, and murdering women particularly. He also kills men and children who are with him. Mick stalks his victims, sabotages their vehicles, and then pretends to offer help, towing them to his camp where he drugs and tortures them. If anyone refuses to accept Mick's offer, he murders them on the spot. He enjoys toying with his victims, often pretending to shoot them before actually doing it. Let's see what made Mick turn into a murderer and a psychotic xenophobe. Terrifying story arc of Mick Taylor explored. Wolf Creek origin. Mick's family was originally from Herbal, which his great-grandfather owned. However, Mick's grandfather lost the deed, and their family lost prestige. Mick lived with his parents and sister. His father, Jim, used to kill animals for a living, and he was a violent man. He would beat up Mick regularly. One day, Mick was at a water hole with his sister when a stranger offered them chocolate, posing the man as a threat. Mick told his sister that they had to leave. Mick's sister wanted the chocolate and refused to leave, and Mick accidentally pushed her down the hill, and she died. Mick went home and lied to his father that it was the stranger that killed his sister. Jim, to take his revenge, killed the innocent man. Mick decides to leave his home before his father finds out the truth. However, Jim did find out that it was Mick who killed his sister and decided to kill his son. But before that, Mick had already left his home. Mick later returned to his home and killed both his parents, even though his mother loved him. It shows that Mick does not care about anyone and has absolutely no remorse for his killings. Mick also told people that it was the stranger who killed his parents. Mick adopted the name of his best friend, Eddie Taylor, and went on to live in a camp. Mick was bullied one day, and he beat up his tormentor so evil that his eyeball was left hanging from the socket. Mick was thrown out of the camp and went on to work at a ranch. Mick became even more violent after that. He killed a dog and forced the owner to eat his dog before killing him. Mick encounters another serial killer named Cutter on the ranch. Cutter took Mick's knife and gave it to another killer to blackmail Mick. Mick killed Cutter and went on to murder the other killers. Mick found a woman named Rose to be his girlfriend, but he used Rose to lure the other killers and killed them. Mick was even forced to stab his girlfriend, and he did that. Rose died from the stab wound. After killing 2 cops, Mick decided to enroll in the Australian Army to fight Vietnam. Wolf Creek Desolation Gate. Mick even became more dangerous and violent after he went to Vietnam, as his superior, Sergeant Atkins, himself was a passionate and violent man. He made a deal with the elder of a local and poverty-ridden village, and he would supply them half-eaten scraps of food if the elder let him rape the women. Atkins decided to take Mick on his team and convinced him to torture and assault women sexually, and after that, Mick murdered them. Atkins encouraged Mick to torture and kill women. Mick and Atkins together killed 2 men who caught them assaulting and killing women. They even killed a young soldier by severing his spine. When the village elder confronted them about killing the 2 men, Atkins killed her by shoving his cane into her throat. Rumors started to spread about Mick killing a soldier. Mick also began telling people how he and Atkins have been raping and killing women. Worried by the fact, Atkins, along with 2 soldiers, conspired to kill Mick, but instead, Mick killed them first. Mick then ran back to his lair, Jerry's mine. Mick believed that he could see the ghosts of Atkins and his friend Eddie, telling him that the mine was used to sacrifice people, and if Mick killed people, the spirits would give him superhuman speed and strength. Mick, after that, started killing the tourists visiting Australia. Wolf Creek. In 1999, British tourist Liz and Kristy visited Western Australia with one of their Australian friends, Ben. They rent a car for the journey and stop at Wolf Creek to enjoy the scenery. They discovered their watches had stopped working hours after returning, and the car became immobile. They decide to stay there for the night. When it's dark, Mick arrives, offering them help. Mick takes the tourists and tows the car back to his place. They arrive at the mine, and Mick, pretending to be fixing the car, makes offensive and filthy jokes about tourists. Mick then offers the tourists drugged water. Hours later, Liz wakes up to find herself gagged and tied up in the shed. She manages to free herself and discovers Mick sexually assaulting Kristy. Liz picks up one of Mick's rifles and fires at him. Mick falls, faking his death. Liz enters another garage and finds Mick's stolen cars. She gets into one of the cars and attempts to start it when Mick arrives and severs her spine with a knife. Kristy, who manages to escape, gets tracked down by Mick, who shoots her in the head despite several primary police searches. there was no trace of Kristy and Liz, most probably because Mick had put their bodies in a car and burned them. However, Ben somehow manages to escape, but since he is only a witness, no one believes him. The movie ends with Mick's silhouette in the sunset, walking with a rifle. Wolf Creek 2. The movie begins with Mick stabbing and burning alive 2 patrol officers who wrongly accuse Mick of exceeding the speed limit and giving him tickets just to meet the quota for speeding tickets. Mick is again on a spree to kill tourists. This time, he targets 2 German backpackers, Katharina and her boyfriend, Rutger. The couple was camping at night when Mick appeared to them and said that the area they were camping in was prohibited and they were violating the rules of the national park. Mick offers to help them so that they won't be fined. Rutger did not accept the offer, to which Mick lost his temper and stabbed him in the back. Katharina passes out. When she wakes up, she somehow manages to flee. A British surfer, Paul, notices her on the road asking for help and lets her into his Jeep. Mick chases them and shoots his rifle aiming at Paul. However, Paul ducks, and it accidentally hits Katharina, killing her instantly. Paul flees. However, he is tracked down by Mick, who takes him captive in his dungeon. Furious about how Paul's action accidentally killed Katharina, Paul manages to flee but is again tracked down by Mick, who chokeholds and hits him on the head, making him unconscious. Paul wakes up on the footpath of a small town, wearing only his underpants and wounds all over his body. He is declared a probable suspect in the murders of several tourists. The movie ends with Taylor walking away into the sunset. Wolf Creek miniseries. Wolf Creek came back with a miniseries in 2016. The 6-part series uncovers the story of a 19-year-old American tourist, Eve Thorogood, who is determined to hunt down Mick, who was responsible for her entire family. Eve is the only surviving victim who, along with the Northern Territory cop, Sullivan Hill, travels across Australia to find Mick. Ben Mitchell, a survivor in the original movie, comes for a brief appearance in the series. The series ends with a twist, leaving viewers wondering whether Mick survived in the end or not. So, is Mick Taylor dead after all? In Wolf Creek, Mick finally gets tracked down by Eve. Eve confronts him back in the house, and in the battle, Eve manages to impale Mick with a fire poker and a broken spear. She burns the house where Mick's body is lying, presumably dead. The following day, Eve comes to the burned house only to find Mick's body missing. In the end, Mick's laugh could be heard, which hints that he might not be dead after all. The series ends with a blue truck driving along the highway. However, whether it's Mick's truck remains undisclosed. Power and abilities of Mick Taylor explore. Mick seems to be a charming man when Liz, Kristy, and Ben first meet him. He offers them help like a good old friend, but Mick is manipulative. So even after the trio's car breaks, and they ask Mick to tow their car to the town, Mick convinces them that he is going in the opposite direction. Thus, Mick soon earned their trust with his helpful nature and sweet talks. No wonder he is manipulative and deceptive, because no one questioned him or his intentions. Moreover, Mick faked his death before Kristy, allowing her to believe that their danger was gone. However, that was a dangerous deception and trap, and Liz got trapped in it, which ended her life. Moreover, what seemed like a lousy fate was not at all the case, because Liz discovered from Ben's video camera that Mick had been following them for a long time, and he could have been the reason behind this whole car fiasco, making him all the more deceptive and manipulative. Mick took pleasure in torturing Kristy, even though he was using rubber bullets. The fact that Kristy was shouting and begging for life was giving him immense pleasure. Mick uses innovative torture methods. For example, he pins Ben on the wall in a cave-like structure where wolves are caged around him. Mick severs Liz's spine and sexually mutilates Kristy until she cries or hurt out. However, Mick is an excellent hunter, and we know this when he shoots Kristy's car tires from a distance. Mick's aim was perfect, and he could always track down his people, whether Liz or Kristy. Mick will track them down and hunt them. He even introduces himself as the pig hunter. These foreign tourists are his pigs. Liz and Kristy fight Mick excellently, but Mick returns victoriously each time. Not only that, Mick killed both, and that too brutally. Marvelous first. So that's Mick Taylor for you, friends. He is a living nightmare, and if you ever come across a friendly godlike savior on the Australian outback, beware, because this friendly man can have some evil intentions too. It's time to sign off today. We hope you liked our episode today. Always use this comment section if you want to add something. That's all. See you in the following video.